We've all dreamt it, a place to call our own, a yard for Fido, maybe even a pool, if the HOA allows it. The quintessential American dream, right? A home where memories are made, where families grow, and where the future feels secure. But lately, that dream of homeownership is starting to look a lot like a nightmare, thanks to skyrocketing HOA fees. These fees, which were once manageable, are now ballooning to levels that many families simply can't afford. These mandatory payments, once a minor annoyance, are turning into budget busters, forcing families to make agonizing decisions about their homes and their futures. It's not just about cutting back on luxuries, it's about making real sacrifices. Now, we know what you're thinking. HOAs? Those busybodies who yell at you for having the wrong shade of beige? Yes, they can be a nuisance, but the issue runs much deeper than aesthetic disagreements. And yes, while that can certainly be true, this isn't about pet peeves or paint colors. This is about a systemic issue that is putting immense financial pressure on homeowners. This is about a growing financial burden that's impacting millions of Americans and shaking the very foundation of homeownership. It's a crisis that is quietly unfolding in neighborhoods across the country. We're talking about families forced to choose between paying their mortgage or putting food on the table. These are real, hard choices that no one should have to make. We're talking about retirees watching their life savings drained by these ever-increasing fees. People who have worked their entire lives, now facing financial instability in their golden years. And we're talking about a housing market where the American dream is increasingly out of reach for many. Young couples, first-time buyers, and even seasoned homeowners are finding it harder to keep up. So, buckle up, because tonight, we're diving headfirst into the murky waters of HOA fees. We'll uncover the hidden costs, the unexpected consequences, and the stories of those caught in the crossfire. We'll expose the driving forces behind these outrageous increases, meet the families caught in the crosshairs, and explore the ripple effects this crisis is having on the entire housing market. From coast to coast, no community is immune, and trust us, you don't want to miss this. It's a story that affects us all, whether you're a homeowner, a renter, or someone dreaming of owning a home someday. Let's talk about insurance, shall we? It's a topic that often makes people groan, but it's crucial, especially when it comes to protecting our homes and communities. Specifically, the kind that HOAs are legally required to have. These policies are meant to safeguard entire neighborhoods from unforeseen disasters. Now, insurance premiums have always been a necessary evil, but recently, they've become downright demonic, and Mother Nature deserves some of the blame. The frequency and intensity of natural disasters have been on the rise. Think back to the devastating hurricanes, wildfires, and other natural disasters that have ravaged communities in recent years. These events are not just isolated incidents, they are becoming more common and more destructive. These events have led to billions of dollars in insurance claims. And guess who's ultimately footing the bill? That's right, the homeowners, through their HOAs. But wait, there's more. That's right, homeowners, through their HOAs. But wait, there's more. The financial burden doesn't stop there. It's not just Mother Nature driving up insurance costs. Insurance companies, those bastions of altruism, are also using the opportunity to line their own pockets. Insurance companies, those bastions of altruism, are also using the opportunity to line their own pockets. They're hiking up premiums, citing everything from increased risk to, well, just because they can. They're hiking up premiums, citing everything from increased risk to, well, just because they can. In some cases, we're talking about increases of hundreds of percent. In some cases, we're talking about increases of hundreds of percent. This perfect storm of natural disasters and corporate greed has created a nightmare scenario for HOAs, who are left with little choice but to pass these exorbitant costs on to homeowners. This perfect storm of natural disasters and corporate greed has created a nightmare scenario for HOAs, who are left with little choice but to pass these exorbitant costs on to homeowners. And as we'll see, these increases can be truly staggering. The financial strain is pushing some families to the brink, forcing them to make tough decisions about their future. Remember the tragic condo collapse in Surfside, Florida back in 2021? Of course you do. It was a moment that captured the nation's attention and left an indelible mark on our collective memory. It was a horrifying reminder that even the seemingly safest buildings can crumble, and it sent shockwaves throughout the nation. Families were torn apart, and communities were left in mourning. But beyond the immediate human cost, The Surfside tragedy also exposed a disturbing truth about building safety and the financial burden it can place on homeowners. The incident highlighted glaring deficiencies in building codes and inspection protocols. In the wake of the disaster, lawmakers in Florida, and indeed across the country, sprang into action, or at least they pretended to. They promised sweeping reforms to ensure such a tragedy would never happen again. New regulations were passed, mandating stricter building inspections, more frequent maintenance, and you guessed it, more insurance. These measures were designed to enhance safety and accountability. While these measures are undoubtedly necessary to prevent future tragedies, they come at a cost that's being passed directly to homeowners through, you guessed it again, increased HOA fees. These fees are meant to cover the heightened expenses of compliance and insurance. So, while the new regulations might make buildings safer, they're also making it more expensive to live in them. The cost of safety is being felt in the wallets of everyday people. And for many homeowners, especially those on fixed incomes or already struggling to make ends meet, these increased fees are simply unsustainable. The financial strain is adding another layer of stress to an already challenging situation. Let's play a little game called Guess What's More Expensive. Is it A, a gallon of milk, B, a used car, C, the labor and materials needed to maintain your HOA's common areas? If you answered D, all of the above, congratulations. You're living in the year 2025, where inflation is like that annoying house guest who just won't leave. That's right, even HOAs aren't immune to the rising cost of, well, everything. From landscaping and pool cleaning to elevator maintenance and security services, everything HOAs pay for has gotten more expensive. And guess who ultimately foots the bill? You're getting good at this. We're talking about basic upkeep becoming a luxury many HOAs can no longer afford. We're talking about deferred maintenance leading to even bigger problems and bigger bills down the road. And we're talking about homeowners being asked to dip into their already stretched budgets to cover the difference. Section 5. The HOA piggy bank is looking a little empty. Imagine this. You're part of an HOA and the roof of your building starts leaking. Not ideal, right? But hey, that's what the HOA's reserve fund is for, right? Well, here's the thing about reserve funds. They need to be, funded. And sadly, many HOAs have chronically underfunded reserves. Why? Well, there are a few reasons. Sometimes it's negligence, sometimes it's a lack of understanding about long-term financial planning, and sometimes it's just plain old kicking the can down the road. Whatever the reason, the result is the same. When unexpected expenses arise, there's no money in the piggy bank to cover them. So what happens then? You guessed it, special assessments? That's right, homeowners get hit with a sudden, often hefty bill to cover the shortfall. And when those shortfalls are caused by things like skyrocketing insurance premiums and mandated building repairs, those special assessments can be enough to give homeowners a financial heart attack. Section 6. Meet the Horns losing sleep and their home over HOA fees. Meet the Horns, a retired couple living in what they thought would be their forever home. They scrimped and saved for years, finally paying off their mortgage and settling into a life of relaxation and leisure. But then, the HOA fee notices started arriving, and their dream retirement quickly turned into a financial nightmare. The Horns story is tragically all too common. They're not alone in facing HOA fee increases that are pushing them to the brink. In fact, there are countless examples of homeowners across the country who are being forced to make agonizing choices because of these soaring costs. These aren't just numbers on a spreadsheet, these are real people with real lives being upended by a system that seems increasingly rigged against them. Section 7. From for sale signs to for rent signs. So, what happens when homeowners can no longer afford their sky-high HOA fees? Well, some are forced to make the heartbreaking decision to sell their homes. But here's the catch. High HOA fees can make homes incredibly difficult to sell. Think about it. Would you want to buy a home with HOA fees that are higher than your mortgage payment? Probably not. And you're not alone. Potential buyers are increasingly wary of properties with hefty HOA fees, knowing they could be inheriting a financial time bomb. The result? A glut of unsold condos and townhomes in some areas, driving down property values and further exacerbating the problem. It's a vicious cycle, and one that's having a ripple effect throughout the entire housing market. Section 8. A national crisis hiding in plain sight. While the stories we've shared tonight might seem like isolated incidents, they're actually indicative of a much larger and more systemic problem. Rising HOA fees aren't just a Florida problem or a California problem or a New York problem. This is a national crisis hiding in plain sight. From coast to coast, homeowners are grappling with the same challenges: skyrocketing insurance premiums, costly new regulations, and the ever-present threat of inflation. And while the specific details might vary from state to state, the end result is the same. Homeownership is becoming increasingly unaffordable for millions of Americans. Section 9, HOAs, buyer beware. So where do we go from here? That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? The truth is there's no easy answer. But one thing's for sure, we need to start by shining a light on this issue and demanding greater transparency and accountability from HOAs. For potential homebuyers, the message is clear: buyer beware. Do your research, ask tough questions, and understand the potential financial risks before signing on the dotted line. Because in this market, the American dream can quickly turn into a financial nightmare. And as for the rest of us, well, it's time to start paying attention. Because if we don't do something to address this growing crisis, it's only a matter of time before it affects us all.